I didn't ask for this fight, but I'll finish it for my sons." Danielle's voice trembled with defiance, clutching the invitation that reopened her scars. 6 years ago, her world shattered, betrayed by lies of infidelity. She was cast out, her love for the man who swore her. She rebuilt her life, raising twin boys with her ex's eyes, but her unyielding heart, now his mother's cruel hand, beckons her to his new wedding, a stage set to humiliate. Yet Danielle arrives not broken, but with her sons, living proof of a truth long buried. Will her presence unravel a web of deceit? Can love survive the ashes of betrayal? Join me, dear listeners, and share where you're tuning in, what time it is, and your guess for this tale's twist. Subscribe, spread the word, and let's uncover if justice or heartbreak awaits. Don't miss a single word. Her W. Danielle Morgan sat at her kitchen table, the weight of the embossed envelope heavier than the Atlanta summer, pressing against her apartment's thin walls. The paper, crested with the Prescott seal, mocked her with its elegance, as if cruelty could hide in gold, foil. Her fingers, calloused from years of fighting for her boys, traced, the sharp edges hesitating at 31. Danielle's ebony skin glowed under the dim bulb, her tight curls pulled into a defiant bun, but her eyes, deep and weary, betrayed the storm within Mommy. "What's that letter?" Micah's voice, bright and curious, cut through her haze across the room. He and Miles, her 5-year-old twins, sprawled on the rug, their Lego tower teetering, their pale skin, blonde curls and blue eyes. So like their fathers, stirred a pang in her chest. Danielle forced a smile, tucking the envelope beneath a stack of bills. "Just grown-up stuff, baby," she said, her voice softer than the ache. It hid. Micah grinned, returning to his blocks, but Miles's gaze lingered. Those eyes too, knowing for a child she couldn't delay any longer, with a breath that felt like surrender. Danielle slid the invitation free, the words danced in cruel clarity. "Ethan Prescott and Isabel Harrington request your presence at their wedding. Savannah's grandest estate, a date 2 weeks away." Tucked inside a note in Evelyn Prescott's precise script. "Danielle, Ethan has found his rightful place. Come see what you could never be." Each syllable was a blade, slicing open wounds. 6 years old. Danielle's grip tightened, crumpling the edge. Evelyn, with her icy smile and old money. Arrogance had always despised her, a black woman from a working-class family, daring to love her pedigreed son 6 years ago. Danielle had believed in forever. She'd met Ethan at a legal aid clinic where her fire for justice caught his eye. He was a corporate lawyer, all charm and rebellion, his sandy hair falling over blue eyes that saw her, truly saw her. Their love was a defiance of Evelyn's world, a promise sealed in stolen kisses and late-night dreams. But when Danielle's pregnancy test showed 2 lines, Evelyn's disdain turned venomous. A forged email, a stranger paid to linger, 2 close lies of infidelity that Ethan, blindsided, believed he'd stood in their apartment. His voice cold. "How could you?" Danielle's pleas were drowned by Evelyn's triumph. Divorced and discarded. She'd fled Atlanta, her twins born in a hospital, far from the Prescott name. Now this invitation was a taunt, a public flogging dressed as courtesy. Danielle's pulse thrummed with rage, but beneath it a quieter pain. Ethan was moving on while she carried the weight of their past alone. She glanced at Micah and Miles, their laughter a lifeline. They deserved more than her silence. More than a father who didn't know they existed. Evelyn wanted her to cower, to slink away. But Danielle Morgan didn't break. "Not then, not now. Bedtime, my loves." She called, her voice steadier than she felt. The twins scampered over. Miles, clutching a dinosaur, Micah's hands sticky with juice as she tucked them in their small bodies. Warm against her, Micah asked, "Mommy, you okay?" His blue eyes, so like Ethan's, searched hers. Danielle kissed his forehead. "I'm fine, sweetheart." Just thinking. Miles yawned, murmuring, "Love you," and her heart clenched for them. She'd face anything, even Evelyn's cruelty. Alone, the dim kitchen, Danielle poured a glass of wine, the cheap kind that burned going down. She stared at the invitation. Its words a dare she could ignore it. Keep her peace, but peace hadn't healed the nights. She'd cried herself to sleep, hadn't erased the questions in her son's eyes. When other kids mentioned their dads, no, she'd go to Savannah, not to beg or weep, but to stand tall. Her boys at her side, their existence, a truth Evelyn couldn't bury her mind. Churned with plans, she'd need a dress, something bold, a statement that screamed she wasn't invisible, an emerald gown, perhaps to set her skin ablaze against Savannah's pastel elite she'd call Kesha her best friend, whose sharp tongue and fierce loyalty would be her shield. And Judge Clara Evans, her mentor, whose name carried weight in Georgia's high society, Clara's presence would tilt the scales. Danielle's lips curved, a spark of defiance igniting. This wasn't just about showing up. It was about rewriting the story Evelyn had scripted. Then there was Daniel Reed, the private investigator, who owed her a favor years ago. She'd helped his sister escape an abusive marriage, and he'd promised to repay her. Danielle grabbed her phone, her fingers. "Daniel, it's Danielle. I need you to dig into someone Evelyn Prescott, everything you can find," his voice crackled with curiosity. "You got it. Give me a week." She hung up, her pulse racing. Evelyn had secrets. Danielle felt it in her bones. As the clock ticked past midnight, Danielle stood, the invitation in her hand. She wouldn't just attend this wedding, she'd turned Evelyn's stage into her own for 6 years. She'd carried the weight of lies now with Micah and Miles. As her truth, she'd shatter the Prescott facade. The road to Savannah would be paved with her courage, and whatever awaited heartbreak or vindication, she'd face it head-on for her sons, for herself. Danielle's resolve burned brighter than the Atlanta dawn, filtering through her kitchen window, the crumpled invitation now a battle flag pinned to her heart. She sipped bitter coffee, her mind racing with the war she'd declared. Evelyn Prescott thought she could summon her to Savannah like a scorned ghost, but Danielle would arrive as a reckoning. Her sons, the undeniable truth, yet the cost of that truth weighed heavy, exposing Micah and Miles to a world that had rejected her. She pushed the fear down, focusing on the fight ahead across the city, in a world of polished marble and whispered deals. Evelyn Prescott sipped chamomile tea, her smile as sharp as the diamonds on her fingers. She'd orchestrated Ethan's engagement to Isabel Harrington with the precision of a chess master. But love was never the prize. Isabel, 30 and poised, was the sole heir to Harrington Maritime, a $500 million empire built by her father Edward. Evelyn had sniffed out the opportunity. Years ago, when Edward's shipping fortune began outshining Savannah's old money, the Prescott estate, quietly bleeding funds, needed a lifeline, and Isabel's wealth. Was it Evelyn had molded Ethan into the perfect suitor, whispering of legacy and duty until he courted Isabel, believing it his choice. To Isabel, she played confidant, preying on the heiress's quiet insecurities. Her father's self-made roots made her a target of elite snobbery. "Ethan will anchor you." Evelyn had cooed, her words velvet over steel. "He's your equal in this world." Isabel, trusting, saw love where Evelyn saw a vault. The plan was simple: marry Ethan into the Harrington fortune, gain influence over the company, and siphon funds to restore Prescott's glory. Inviting Danielle was a cruel flourish meant to cement Isabel's place, while crushing a past inconvenience. Danielle, oblivious to Evelyn's greed, was building her own arsenal. She stood in a boutique, the emerald gown draped over her arm, like a warrior's banner. Its deep green would make her skin glow, a defiant contrast to Savannah's pastel elite. "You're going to slay in that," Kesha said. Her silver dress already picked for the wedding, Danielle's best friend, a nurse with a tongue sharp enough to cut through lies, leaned close. "Evelyn's going to choke when she sees you." Danielle's lips twitched. "That's the plan back home." She dialed Judge Clara Evans, her mentor from the legal clinic. Clara's voice, warm and commanding, crackled through Danielle. "What's this about a wedding?" Danielle explained, her words steady. Despite the knot in her chest, "I need you there, Clara. Your name carries weight. It'll remind them." "I'm not alone," Clara chuckled, a sound like rolling thunder. "All clear." "My schedule, let's give them a show." Danielle exhaled, bolstered. Clara's presence would shift the room, a black woman whose influence dwarfed Evelyn's posturing. The riskiest move was Daniel Reed. Danielle met the private investigator in a diner, his weathered face lit by neon. "Evelyn Prescott," she said, sliding the invitation across the table. "I need everything, her secrets, her lies." Daniel, who owed Danielle for saving his sister, nodded. "She's got skeletons. I'll find him 1 week." His confidence sparked hope, but Danielle's gut churned. Evelyn's cruelty ran deep. What else had she buried? The hardest choice was her sons. Danielle knelt by their beds. That night, Micah clutching a stuffed dinosaur, Miles's curls splayed across the pillow, their pale faces so like Ethan's, were a reminder of what she'd lost and what they deserved. She'd shielded them from their father's absence, spinning tales of a faraway daddy who loved them, but bringing them too. Savannah meant exposing them to Ethan, to Evelyn, to a truth that could wound. Her heart ached. As she stroked Miles's cheek, "We're going on a trip," she whispered, "to meet someone special." Miles stirred, mumbling, "Is it Daddy?" Danielle's throat tightened. "Maybe, sweetheart. We'll see." She stood, resolve hardening. They deserved a father, not a shadow. If Ethan rejected them, she'd shield their hearts as she always had. But if he saw them, really saw them, Evelyn's lies would crumble. Danielle paced her apartment, sketching plans, the gown, Kesha, Clara, Daniel, each a piece of her counterstrike. She imagined Evelyn's face when she walked in, Micah and Miles at her side, their blue eyes a mirror of Ethan's. The thought sent a thrill through her, fierce and alive, as the week ticked by. Danielle's dreams grew restless, haunted by Ethan's voice. "How could you?" She woke sweat-soaked, vowing to rewrite that memory. Daniel's call came late one night. "I've got something," he said, his voice low. "It's big. Meet me before you leave for Savannah." Danielle's pulse raced. Whatever he'd found, it was a weapon, one she'd wield with precision. She folded the emerald gown into her suitcase, her fingers lingering on the fabric. Savannah awaited a battlefield, draped in roses and lies. Evelyn thought she'd scripted the ending, but Danielle was no longer the woman she'd broken with her sons. As her strength and allies at her back, she'd turn this wedding into a reckoning. The truth was her blade, and she'd carve it deep. Danielle Morgan's heart thundered as she stepped into the lion's den, her emerald gown a blazing defiance against the whispers that trailed. Her Micah and Miles clung to her hands, their tiny tuxedos crisp, their blonde curls catching the glow of lanterns strung across the Savannah estate. The air buzzed with the weight of her gamble, bringing her sons to face a past that had scarred her. Kesha, fierce and silver-shot, her a look of unshakable loyalty. "You've got this, Queen," she murmured. Judge Clara Evans, regal in navy silk, nodded, her presence a silent promise of power. Danielle squared her shoulders, her ebony skin radiant, and crossed the threshold, ready to shatter Evelyn Prescott's cruel stage. The crowd, Savannah's elite in their couture armor, turned as one, their gazes sharp with curiosity. "Who's she?" a woman in pearls hissed. "Those boys, they're Prescott's," another muttered, eyes darting to Micah and Miles's unmistakable features. Danielle felt the weight of their judgment, but her son's small hands anchored her. Just hours earlier, she'd nearly turned back. She hadn't worn heels this high in years, and a quiet voice in her head, one Evelyn had planted long ago, still whispered, "You don't belong here. You'll embarrass them." But she'd silenced it with Clara's words and the memory of Micah asking, "Will Daddy know us?" She was no longer the broken woman Evelyn had cast out. She was a mother, a warrior, and this was her moment. Evelyn stood at the entrance, her champagne gown pristine, her smile a blade thinly veiled. "Danielle?" she drawled, her voice dripping venom. "How audacious of you to come." Her eyes flicked to the twins, narrowing as she registered their pale skin, their blue eyes, Ethan's eyes. "And you brought children?" The question was a challenge, daring Danielle to falter. Danielle met her gaze, her voice steady as steel. "My sons, Evelyn. Ethan's sons." The words landed like a thunderclap, and Evelyn's facade cracked, a flicker of panic betraying her poise. "Preposterous," she scoffed, but her hands trembled, clutching her clutch too tightly. Before Evelyn could weave another lie, Ethan appeared, his tuxedo tailored to perfection. His sandy hair swept back, his blue eyes, so like the twins, widened in shock. "Danielle," he croaked, his voice a raw wound. His gaze dropped to Micah and Miles, and the world seemed to still. Micah, bold as ever, stepped forward, his small voice clear in the hushed grandeur. "I'm Micah. This is Miles. Are you our daddy?" The question hung, fragile and devastating, silencing the crowd. Gasps rippled through the guests, their whispers now a roar of speculation. Ethan knelt, his hands shaking as he studied the boys. "My sons," he whispered, his voice breaking. He looked to Danielle, searching for answers in her steady gaze. Her heart pounded, but she held firm, the pain of 6 years sharpening her words. "I tried to tell you, Ethan, 6 years ago when your mother lied." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of truth long buried. "She told you I betrayed you. I begged you to listen. But you chose her." The accusation was quiet, yet it cut deeper than any scream, and Ethan flinched. guilt etching his face. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a tide of scandal threatening to drown Evelyn's composure. She stepped forward, her voice shrill. "This is a stunt, a desperate attempt to ruin my son's day." But her words faltered as eyes turned to the twins, their resemblance to Ethan undeniable. A man in a tailored suit muttered, "They're his spitting image." A woman in diamonds nodded, her fan snapping shut. Evelyn's grip on the narrative was slipping, and Danielle saw the fear in her eyes, a predator cornered. Isabel Harrington emerged from the throng, her ivory gown flowing like a river, her auburn hair swept into an elegant updo. Confusion clouded her delicate features as she approached, her voice sharp with unease. "Ethan, what's happening?" Her eyes darted from the twins to Danielle, then to Ethan, who still knelt, frozen. "Who are they?" she demanded, her poise fraying. Ethan rose, his face a storm of shock and sorrow, unable to answer. Danielle's heart ached for Isabel, another pawn in Evelyn's game, but she stood tall, her sons her shield. Evelyn seized the moment, her voice clawing for control. "Isabel, darling, this is nonsense. Danielle's fabricating lies to sabotage your happiness." But the crowd wasn't hers anymore. Their eyes lingered on Micah and Miles, on Danielle's unyielding strength. Clara stepped closer, her presence a quiet command, her dark eyes locking onto Evelyn. "Careful, Mrs. Prescott," she said, her voice low but lethal. "Truth has a way of cutting through lies." Evelyn's smile wavered, and Danielle felt a surge of triumph. The stage was shifting. Micah tugged at Danielle's gown, his voice small but piercing. "Mommy, why is..." Everyone staring. Miles's hand tightened in hers, his blue eyes wide. Danielle knelt, her voice soft. "Because you're special, my loves. Don't be scared," she rose, meeting Ethan's gaze. Seeing the man she'd loved drowning in regret, the air crackled with unspoken questions. Would he believe her now? Could he face the truth and Isabel caught in the crossfire? What would she choose? Danielle's pulse raced as she sensed the moment, teetering on a knife's edge. Daniel Reed's promise of secrets loomed in her mind, a weapon yet to be drawn. Evelyn's panic was palpable, her empire of lies trembling. The wedding meant to crown her victory was unraveling. And Danielle stood at its heart, her sons, the spark that would ignite the truth. Whatever came next, revelation or ruin, she was ready. The air in the Savannah estate crackled, charged with the weight of Danielle Morgan's truth and the crowd's hungry whispers. Micah and Miles's small hands anchored her, their blue eyes Ethan's eyes, sparking a fire that burned through Evelyn Prescott's carefully spun lies. Danielle stood resolute in her emerald gown, her ebony skin glowing under the chandeliers, Kesha's fierce loyalty and Clara Evans's commanding presence bolstering her. Ethan still reeling from the twins. Existence looked at her with a mix of guilt and longing. While Isabel Harrington's confusion hung like a storm cloud, Evelyn's shrill denial echoed, but the tide was turning and Danielle felt it, a shift toward justice. Then Daniel Reed stepped forward, his weathered face unyielding. A slim folder clutched in his hand. Danielle's pulse surged. She hadn't expected him here, not now. "Mrs. Prescott," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "This concerns you." The crowd, still sensing blood in the water. Daniel handed the folder to Ethan, whose trembling fingers opened it, revealing a stack of papers that promised ruin. Evelyn's champagne gown seemed to wilt as her eyes darted to the folder, her composure fraying. "What is this nonsense?" she snapped, but her voice quavered, betraying fear. Ethan's face paled as he scanned the documents. Emails, bank records, grainy photos. "Mother," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "is this true?" He held up a printed email dated 6 years ago, detailing payments to a man hired to pose as Danielle's lover, complete with staged photos that had shattered their marriage. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath. Danielle's heart clenched, the pain of that betrayal flooding back, but she stood taller, her son's warmth grounding her. "You paid to frame me," she said, her voice steady, each word a dagger. "You tore us apart." Evelyn's hands fluttered, grasping for control. "I was protecting you, Ethan. She wasn't right for you." Her background. Her Clara cut her off, her voice like a gavel. "Her strength, you mean her love?" The judge's dark eyes pinned Evelyn, who flinched, but the folder held more, and Daniel wasn't done. "Keep reading," he said, his tone grim. Ethan turned the page, his jaw tightening as he uncovered correspondence between Evelyn and a shady financial advisor. The words laid bare her true motive, manipulating Ethan's marriage to Isabel Harrington. To access her $500 million Harrington maritime fortune, Isabel, standing frozen in her ivory wall, gown leaned closer, her auburn hair catching the light. As she read over Ethan's shoulder, her gasp was sharp, a wounded sound. "You used me," she demanded, whirling on Evelyn. The older woman stammered. "I was securing our future," but Isabel's eyes blazed with betrayal. The documents detailed Evelyn's plan: convince Ethan to marry Isabel, gain influence over her company, and siphon funds to prop up the dwindling Prescott estate. Evelyn had preyed on Isabel's insecurities, whispering that Ethan was her path to elite acceptance, all while plotting to plunder her father's legacy. "You befriended me," Isabel said, her voice shaking with fury. "You made me believe I needed Ethan to belong. This was all a lie." The crowd's whispers turned to murmurs of disgust, their allegiance shifting. Danielle watched, her heart twinging with unexpected empathy. Isabel, like her, was Evelyn's pawn, her trust weaponized. Ethan's voice broke, the silence raw with rage. "You destroyed my family for money, my son's mother. My sons." He clutched the folder, his knuckles white as mica, and Miles looked up, confused, but clinging to Danielle. Isabel turned to Danielle, her poise cracking. "I didn't know," she said, her voice soft but resolute, "about you, your sons, any of this. I thought Ethan was free to love me, but this," she gestured to the folder. "This is betrayal." With trembling hands, she slid her engagement ring off, pressing it into Ethan's palm. "I won't marry into a lie. My father's legacy deserves better." The crowd buzzed, some nodding in respect, others glaring at Evelyn, whose face crumpled, her elegance dissolving into desperation. Ethan dropped to his knees before Micah and Miles, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his hands hovering, unsure if he could touch them. Micah tilted his head, curious, while Miles hid behind Danielle's gown. "I didn't know you existed," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "But I'm here now." Danielle's throat tightened, torn between hope and the scars of his past rejection. She knelt, her voice gentle. "They're your sons, Ethan, but they're mine. First earn their trust." Clara stepped forward, her presence a beacon. "Ethan, those boys are your spitting image. Danielle raised them alone, while your mother wove her web. You owe her more than apologies." Her words were a challenge, and Ethan nodded, his eyes locked on Danielle's. The crowd's scrutiny weighed heavily, but Evelyn's voice pierced through, shrill and frantic. "You're all fools. She's manipulating you." But no one listened. Her empire was crumbling, and Danielle stood at its center. Her sons, the truth she'd carried alone. Daniel leaned close to Danielle, his voice a whisper. "There's more." Her pulse quickened. What else could he have? Evelyn's panic was a living thing, her eyes darting for an escape. Isabel's departure, Ethan's anguish, and the twins. Innocent gazes converged, a storm ready to break. Danielle tightened, her grip on her son's hands, her heart pounding. The wedding meant to crown Evelyn's victory was now her undoing. And Danielle's truth was only beginning to burn. The Savannah estate, once a stage for Evelyn Prescott's triumph, now pulsed with the raw electricity of her unraveling. Danielle Morgan stood unwavering, her emerald gown a beacon. Amidst the chaos, Micah and Miles's small hands are tethered to courage. Ethan's anguished gaze lingered on their sons, his tears a silent plea for forgiveness, while Isabel's discarded ring glinted on the floor, a symbol of her shattered trust. The crowd's whispers were a rising tide, their judgment turning on Evelyn, whose champagne gown hung limp, her poise eroded by Daniel Reed's damning folder. Danielle's heart raced. Daniel's whispered promise of more hung like a storm cloud, and she braced for the next blow. Daniel stepped forward, his weathered face a mask of grim determination, as he gestured to a man hovering at the crowd's edge. "Paul Grayson," he said, his voice slicing through the tension. "Mrs. Prescott's former lawyer. He has something to say." Paul, gray-haired and visibly uneasy, shuffled forward, his tailored suit ill-fitting, his nervous demeanor. The guests leaned in, sensing another fracture in Evelyn's facade. Danielle's pulse quickened. She hadn't anticipated this witness, but Daniel's instincts were sharp, and she trusted the blade he was about to wield. "Speak, Paul," Daniel urged, his tone unyielding. Paul cleared his throat, his eyes darting to Evelyn, who froze, her hands clutching her clutch. Like a lifeline. I helped her." He stammered, his voice thin but clear. Mrs. Prescott intercepted a letter from Edward Harrington to his daughter Isabel. It warned her about the Prescott family's financial troubles and urged her to delay the marriage. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and Isabel, poised at the edge of the gathering, turned back her ivory gown, trailing like a ghost. "My father." She whispered, her voice cracking with disbelief. Paul's confession spilled faster. Now, as if unburdening a long-held sin, she made sure you never saw it, Miss Harrington. She wanted you tied to Ethan before you could question her motives. Isabel's face contorted, a mix of fury and grief. "You stole my father's words," she demanded, advancing on Evelyn. The older woman's eyes widened, her voice shrill. "I was protecting my son's future." But Paul wasn't finished. "There's more," he said, glancing at Danielle. "She siphoned funds from the Prescott Harrington charity project, hundreds of thousands funneled to offshore accounts to secure her estate. Once she had access to Harrington Maritime." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. Isabel's hands clenched, her voice rising. "You preyed on my family's legacy, used my father's trust to line your pockets." The crowd's murmurs turned to outrage, their faces hardening against Evelyn. Danielle's chest tightened, her empathy for Isabel deepening. They were both pawns in Evelyn's greed, their lives reshaped by her ambition. Ethan, still kneeling near the twins, stood, his voice a low growl. "You stole from my sons, from Isabel's father." He turned to Paul, his eyes blazing. "How could you help her?" Paul shrank under the scrutiny. "She threatened my career," he muttered. "I had no choice but." The crowd's disdain drowned his excuses, their allegiance now with Danielle and Isabel. Evelyn staggered, collapsing into a gilded chair, her sobs theatrical but hollow. "I did it for you, Ethan," she cried, her voice breaking. "For our name." No one moved to comfort her. Her empire of lies lay in ruins, exposed by the truth Danielle had carried for 6 years. Isabel's gaze swept the room, landing on Danielle. "I'm done," she declared, her voice steady despite her trembling frame. "This wedding is over. I won't be part of the Prescott's deceit." She turned her gown, sweeping the floor like a battle flag, and strode toward the exit, the crowd parting in awe. Danielle watched, her heart swelling with respect. Isabel's strength mirrored her own, a woman reclaiming her power. Micah tugged at her gown, his voice "Small mommy is daddy." Staying, Danielle knelt, her eyes soft. "We'll see, baby, he's trying." She glanced at Ethan, whose face was a map of regret and resolve. Ethan stepped closer, his voice raw. "Danielle, I didn't know about the boys, about her schemes. I failed you." His hands hovered near Micah and Miles, who watched him warily. Danielle's throat tightened, the weight of his words stirring old wounds. "They're your sons," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "But trust is earned." "Ethan, start with them." Clara's voice cut through her presence, a steady anchor. "You've got a long road, Ethan. Those boys deserve a father, not a ghost." Her words were a challenge, and Ethan nodded, his eyes never leaving Danielle's. The crowd's attention shifted as Evelyn rose, her face a mask of defiance. Despite her tears, "You're all fools," she hissed, her voice venomous. "She's manipulating you." But her words fell flat, the guests turning away, their respect now with Danielle's quiet strength and Isabel's bold exit. Daniel leaned close to Danielle, his whisper urgent. "There's still more to come. Stay ready." Her heart pounded. What else could Evelyn have hidden? The twins' innocent gazes, Ethan's tentative hope, and the crowd's shifting allegiance swirled around her, a storm poised to break. Danielle tightened, her grip on her son's hands, her resolve unyielding. The wedding meant to crown Evelyn's victory had become her downfall, and Danielle's truth was the spark that ignited it. With Danielle's secret still unfolding and Isabel's departure echoing in her heart, Danielle knew the battle wasn't over. But for the first time in 6 years, she felt the tide turning. Her sons, her beacon in the chaos, the echoes of Isabel's defiant exit still lingered in Danielle Morgan's heart. As she sat in a Savannah cafe, the late morning sun casting golden streaks across the worn wooden table, Micah and Miles's laughter floated from a corner where Kesha orchestrated a game of checkers, their blonde curls bouncing with each gleeful move. Danielle's emerald gown was gone, replaced by a simple white blouse and jeans, but the fire in her ebony eyes burned as fiercely as it had at the wedding. The weight of Evelyn Prescott's exposed lies pressed against her, yet a new strength bloomed. Isabel's courage had mirrored her own, forging an unexpected kinship in the ashes. Of betrayal, Isabel Harrington entered, her auburn hair loose, her tailored blazer a far cry from the ivory gown she'd abandoned, her face once clouded with confusion. Now carried a quiet resolve. Danielle, she said, sliding into the chair opposite. Thank you for meeting me. Her voice was steady, but her fingers twisted a napkin, betraying the storm. Beneath, Danielle nodded, her throat tight. You didn't have to walk away, Isabel, but you did. The words were an acknowledgement, a bridge between two women who'd been pawns in the same cruel game. I had to, Isabel said, her green eyes meeting Danielle's. When I saw those papers, your sons, I realized I was part of a lie. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. I misjudged you. Danielle, Evelyn used us both, me for my money, you for her pride. I'm sorry. The apology hung raw and unguarded, and Danielle felt a pang of connection. She expected anger, not this vulnerability. You couldn't have known, she replied, her voice soft but firm. She played us all. Isabel's lips trembled and she looked away, her gaze distant. There's more. She said, her words a confession. Evelyn fed me lies about you. She said you were a gold digger, that you'd trapped Ethan for his money and left when it got tough. I believed her. Danielle's breath caught the sting of Evelyn's venom, sharper than she'd expected. Another twist in the web. Evelyn hadn't just framed her to Ethan, but poisoned Isabel's perception to ensure her loyalty. She wanted me to feel superior. Isabel continued to bind me to Ethan. I was such a fool. Danielle's hands clenched, but she forced them to relax. You weren't a fool, she said, her voice steady. Despite the ache, you were a target like me. She used my love for Ethan to break me and your trust to trap you. The words wove a thread between them, their shared wounds a fragile bond. Isabel's eyes glistened, but she nodded, a spark of defiance igniting. I'm done being her pawn. I've launched an investigation into the charity funds she stole. My father's legacy won't be her plaything. The mention of Edward Harrington stirred Danielle's curiosity. Your father. He tried to warn you, didn't he? Isabel's face softened, a mix of pride and sorrow. He's always seen through people like Evelyn. I wish I'd listened sooner. I'm working with a colleague, Marcus Tate, to rebuild the charity. He's different, honest. Her voice warmed, a hint of something new, and Danielle's lips curved. Isabel was healing, finding her own path. The cafe door swung open, and Ethan Prescott stepped in, a bouquet of sunflowers in his hands. Danielle's heart skipped the sight of him, sandy hair, tousled blue eyes, heavy with regret, stirring memories of love and loss. He approached his steps, tentative. Danielle, Isabel, he said, his voice raw. I owe you both more than words. He set the sunflowers before Danielle, their golden petals, a quiet plea. I failed you. I let her lies blind me. His gaze shifted to the twins giggling with Kesha, and his voice broke. I missed 5 years with my sons. Danielle's throat tightened, torn between his sincerity and the scars he'd left. You did, she said, her voice firm, but not cruel. But here now, Ethan, start with them. Isabel watched, her expression unreadable, then spoke, her voice steady. You failed me too, Ethan. I thought we had love, but it was built on her schemes. I ended it because I deserve honesty, and so does Danielle. Her words were a mirror reflecting their shared demand for truth. Ethan nodded, his shoulders sagging. I'm trying, he said, his eyes locked on Danielle. I want to be their father, and maybe one day more. The hope in his voice was fragile, and Danielle's heart wavered, but she held her ground. Earn it, she said, her voice a challenge for them. Micah's voice cut through bright and oblivious. Mommy, look, I won. He ran over Miles, trailing, and Ethan knelt, his smile tentative. Good job, buddy, he said, his hand hovering near Micah's shoulder. A father learning to reach. Kesha joined them, her eyes narrowing at Ethan but softening at Danielle's nod. They're happy, she whispered, a reminder of Danielle's strength. Isabel stood, her poise returning. I'm taking back my life, she said, her gaze shifting between Danielle and Ethan. You should too. She squeezed Danielle's hand, a silent vow of alliance, and left her steps. Lighter, Danielle watched her sons play Ethan's presence, a new thread in their tapestry. The cafe's warmth wrapped around her. But Danielle's warning, there's still more, lingered. Evelyn's lies were unraveling, but the full truth loomed, a shadow yet to break. With Isabel as an ally and Ethan seeking redemption, Danielle felt a spark of hope. Her sons her guiding light. The battle wasn't over, but she was no longer alone. The sun dipped low over Atlanta, casting a warm glow through Danielle Morgan's apartment. where the laughter of Micah and Miles filled the thick air, like a melody. Months had passed since the Savannah wedding imploded, and Danielle, now standing in her kitchen, felt the weight of those days lighten her ebony skin, caught the light as she stirred. A pot of gumbo, the scent mingling with the vibrant chaos of her son's artwork, plastering the walls, crayon sketches of soccer games, family picnics, and a man with sandy hair they now called Daddy. The twins. Joy was her anchor, but the path to this moment had been carved with courage, and Danielle wore it like a crown. Micah burst in, waving, a drawing. Mommy, look, it's with Daddy at the park. His blue eyes sparkled so like Ethan's, and Danielle's heart swelled. That's beautiful, baby, she said, kneeling to hug him. Miles trailed behind, clutching a soccer ball, his curls damp from play. When's Daddy coming? He asked, his voice hopeful. Danielle's smile softened soon. Sweetheart, he's got a surprise for you. The twins cheered, scampering off, and Danielle straightened, her mind drifting to Ethan. His tentative steps, his persistent heart. Ethan Prescott had uprooted his life trading Savannah's polished offices for Atlanta's gritty nonprofit scene. He now worked at a community center, mentoring kids not unlike the ones Danielle fought for at her legal clinic. The clinic, bolstered by a generous grant from Isabel Harrington, had expanded its walls, echoing with the voices of those Danielle helped: single mothers, evicted families, dreamers like her. Isabel's gift was more than money. It was a testament to their shared resilience, a bond forged in the crucible of Evelyn's betrayal. Evelyn Prescott's name, once a specter, now carried only echoes of disgrace. Her financial schemes, siphoning charity funds, manipulating Isabel's fortune, had unraveled under legal scrutiny. Savannah's elite had turned their backs, their invitations drying up, their whispers branding her a pariah. She'd fled to a quiet coastal town, her empire reduced to a rented cottage and bitter regrets. Danielle felt no joy in her downfall, only relief. Evelyn's absence was a clean slate, a chance to rebuild without her shadow. Ethan had seized that chance. He'd hired a lawyer to recover the trust fund Evelyn hid, a legacy from his father, meant for any grandchildren. The funds now secured promised Micah and Miles college travel and dreams. Danielle once thought out of reach. Ethan coached their soccer team, his cheers mingling with theirs on muddy fields, and read them bedtime stories, his voice stumbling over dinosaur names to their delight. Each visit chipped away at Danielle's walls, though she guarded her heart, wary of its old bruises. She glanced at a photo on the fridge, her and Ethan at the clinic 6 years ago, laughing under fluorescent lights. He'd kept it. He'd said, even when he believed her a traitor. The memory stirred warmth, but trust was a slow bloom, and Danielle wasn't ready to rush it. Her sons came first, their happiness, her North Star. Micah's question at the cafe lingered. His daddy staying? Ethan was trying, and that was enough for now. Isabel's name surfaced, often her updates a bright thread in Danielle's days. Leading Harrington Maritime, Isabel had restored the stolen charity funds, her father's legacy shining brighter for it. She'd grown close to Marcus Tate, the marine biologist whose quiet strength grounded her. Danielle smiled at Isabel's emails, laced with hints of romance. Dinners by the coast, walked through marshlands. Their friendship, born of shared scars, was a gift. Danielle hadn't expected a reminder that truth could build as fiercely as lies could destroy. Kesha's voice broke her reverie, the nurse breezing in with a grin. Girl, your boys are wild today. Ethan better bring his A game. Danielle laughed, the sound freer than it had been in years. He's learning, she said, her eyes warm. Kesha nudged her. And you learning to let him in? Danielle's smile faltered, her heart wrestling with hope and fear. One step at a time, she murmured, and Kesha squeezed her hand, understanding. The doorbell rang, and Micah and Miles raced to answer, their shouts of Daddy filling the apartment. Ethan stepped in, his nonprofit polo rumpled, a soccer ball under one arm, and a grin that lit his blue eyes. Who's ready for practice? He called, and the twins tackled him, their laughter a symphony. He caught Danielle's gaze, holding it with a tenderness that stirred her pulse. Smells amazing in here, he said, his voice soft. You're amazing. Danielle's cheeks warmed, but she waved him off. Feed my boys first, then talk sweet. As they left for the park, Danielle lingered at the door, watching Ethan hoist Miles onto his shoulders, Micah tugging his hand, her heart XT with possibility, tempered by caution. Danielle's final warning, There still more had yielded, no new secrets. Evelyn's lies fully exposed. Yet Danielle felt a new chapter dawning, one where her son's laughter was her guide. Isabel's strength, Ethan's effort, and her own resilience. Whoa, a tapestry of hope. She closed the door, the photo on the fridge catching her eye. Maybe, just maybe, love could grow again, not the reckless flame of 6 years ago, but something steadier rooted in truth. For now, Danielle savored the present, her son's joy, her victory, and the horizon ahead glowed with promise. The Charleston coastline shimmered under a June sun, its golden rays dancing on waves that whispered of renewal. Danielle Morgan, now 33, stood amidst the magnolia-scented air, her coral dress flowing like a soft tide against her ebony skin. Tiny pearls gleamed in her curls, a quiet crown for the woman who'd turned pain into power. Micah and Miles, 6 years old and bursting with energy, fidgeted beside her, their navy blazers rumpled blonde curls, barely tamed as ring-bearers for Isabel Harrington's wedding to Marcus Tate. They clutched baskets of rose petals, their blue eyes wide with excitement. Danielle's heart swelled, the past year's healing woven into this moment of joy. Ethan Prescott stood close, his hand brushing hers, a warmth that stirred her cautious heart. His nonprofit work and devotion to their sons had deepened their bond, though. Danielle held her love like a fragile seed, not yet fully bloomed. The low-country estate, adorned with wild flowers and lanterns, buzzed with a smaller, warmer crowd than Savannah's spectacle. Isabel's lace gown caught the breeze as she walked, the aisle, her auburn hair glowing, her smile radiant for Marcus, whose brown skin and gentle eyes shone with adoration, their love born in quiet moments. Studying coastal marshes was a balm after Evelyn's betrayal. Danielle watched Isabel's vows, promising to nurture Marcus's dreams, and felt a pang of kinship. A year ago they'd been strangers, bound by Evelyn's lies. Isabel targeted for her fortune, Danielle for her love. Now their friendship was a lighthouse guiding them. Through shared scars, Isabel had invited Danielle's family to this day, insisting Micah and Miles share its magic. "You gave me courage," she'd written, and Danielle had come her sons. Her pride, her heart open to celebration. Micah tugged her dress, his whisper loud enough to draw chuckles. "Mommy, is this like your wedding?" With Daddy. Danielle's cheeks warmed, her eyes meeting Ethan's, his blue gaze, soft with hope, not quite baby. She murmured, squeezing his hand. The crowd's laughter faded as Marcus lifted Isabel's veil, their kiss sealing a love untainted by deceit. Danielle's throat tightened, memories of her own lost vows mingling with the promise of this new chapter. At the reception, under a canopy of stars, Isabel found Danielle near the dance floor, where Kesha spun the twins in giggling circles. "Danielle," Isabel said, her voice thick with emotion, "I wouldn't be here without you." Her lace gown shimmered, but her eyes held the weight of their journey. "You showed me strength, standing there with your sons." Fearless, Danielle's heart clenched, her voice soft. "And you showed me forgiveness," walking away from her lies. They hugged, a fierce embrace that sealed their bond. Two women who'd reclaimed their truths. Marcus joined them, his linen suit creased from dancing, his smile warm. "Your family," now he said, his deep voice earnest. "Thank you for being here." Micah ran up, petals stuck in his curls, tugging on Marcus's hand. "Dance with us," he demanded, and Marcus laughed, scooping both twins into a twirl, their squeals echoing over the soulful band. Danielle watched, her heart full. Her sons, once shadows of a broken past, now glowed in a community of love. Ethan offered his hand, his voice low. "Dance with me." Danielle hesitated, then slipped her hand into his, the calluses from soccer practices, a testament to his change. They swayed to a slow melody, his touch familiar yet new. "You look beautiful," he murmured, his eyes tracing her face. "Not just tonight, always." Danielle's pulse quickened, her guard softening. "You're trying, Ethan," she said, her voice a mix of caution and warmth. "I see it." His smile was tentative, a man learning to hope. "I'll keep trying for them, for you." The music swelled, and Danielle leaned into him, the past year flashing through her mind. Ethan's bedtime stories, his cheers at Micah's goals, his quiet apologies. Evelyn's shadow was gone, her disgrace a distant echo. Isabel's grant had lifted Danielle's clinic, and her friendship had lifted her spirit. The twins' laughter, Marcus's kindness, Kesha's loyalty. This was her world now rebuilt on truth. Micah's voice cut through, gleeful. "Daddy, spin, Mommy." Ethan twirling Danielle, her coral dress flaring like a flame. The crowd clapped and she caught Isabel's eye, her friend. Beaming beside Marcus, Danielle's heart soared, the weight of 6 years lifting under the stars. She'd walked into Savannah, expecting shame, but emerged with her sons, her strength and allies who saw her as the song ended. Ethan held her close, his whisper raw. "I love you, Danielle." "I always have," she didn't answer, but her hand lingered in his. A silent, maybe Micah and Miles tackled them, their giggles a promise. "Tomorrow?" Isabel raised a glass, her voice carrying to love. "To truth, to us." The crowd cheered, and Danielle raised her glass, her eyes shining. This wedding, unlike the one that broke her, was a tapestry of healing, and she was woven into its heart. Danielle's heart danced under Charleston's stars, her son's laughter, weaving a future from the ashes of betrayal. Isabel's vows echoed, a testament to love reborn, while Ethan's steady hand promised redemption from a cruel invitation to a radiant reunion. Danielle's truth reshaped their world, proving resilience conquers lies. Dear listeners, thank you for joining this journey. Your hearts make these stories soar. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep the fire alive. Drop a comment. Where are you listening from and what moved you most? Let's keep the truth burning bright together. Until next time, stay strong, stay true.